In 1915, most of Japan had never seen an electric motor. The country was industrializing fast, but electricity was still rare. Cities had a few imported generators, towns used kerosene lamps, and in the countryside little had changed. Power lines were being built, but the system was fragile. Motors burned out. Transformers failed. Lighting equipment broke soon after installation. The machines came from abroad, but almost nobody in Japan knew how to keep them running. The gap between having electricity and maintaining it was enormous. Mosaburo Makita was born in 1893 in Aichi Prefecture on Honshu's central coast, into a family of timber merchants. From childhood, he understood raw materials, physical labor, and the economics of making things by hand. He was not a theorist or a grand inventor. He was a practical young man with a talent for electrical engineering and a clear sense of what the country lacked. In March 1915, at 21, he founded Makita Electric Works in Nagoya as a sole proprietorship. He did not make power tools yet. He repaired and sold lighting equipment, electric motors, and transformers using machinery bought from a shuttered Tokyo electrical firm. His only co-worker was 17-year-old Jujiro Goto, also from the same company. Together they opened a repair shop. The business was simple but necessary. Japan's factories and buildings were filling with imported electrical equipment, and that equipment kept failing. Makita fixed it. Soon the shop earned a reputation. The motors Makita repaired lasted longer than the ones competitors touched. That reputation became the company's identity. For 43 years, Makita was still basically a repair shop. Through the 1920s and 1930s, it repaired motors, sold transformers, and serviced the electrical infrastructure of a rapidly industrializing nation. The Great Kanto earthquake of 1923 increased demand for skilled repair work, and Makita survived. In September 1935, the company made its first international move by exporting electric generators and motors to the Soviet Union. It was a small order, but it showed Makita could manufacture components reliable enough for a foreign buyer to trust. In December 1938, Makita Electric Works Incorporated, with capital of 180,000 yen and 94 employees. Then the war came. By the early 1940s, Japan was at war across the Pacific, and industrial production shifted toward military needs. Nagoya became a major bombing target. By 1944, American raids were devastating the city. Factories burned, neighborhoods were flattened, and the industrial base was being erased from the air. In April 1945, Makita moved the operation to Anjo, about 30 kilometers south, in a desperate attempt to survive. The war ended 4 months later. Japan was left in ruins. Factories were destroyed, supply chains were broken, and raw materials were scarce. Makita returned to repairing motors and keeping the lights on. Anjo became the permanent headquarters. For the next 13 years, Makita rebuilt. Japan's post-war recovery transformed the country, construction exploded, and every site needed power tools and motors. Makita served that demand, but it was still only repairing and maintaining, not manufacturing under its own name. The turning point came from Jujiro Goto, who had joined in 1915 as a teenager and rose to president decades later. In January 1958, Makita made and sold a portable electric planer, Model 1000, the first of its kind in Japan. It was a major break from the company's repair shop past. Makita had never built a power tool before, and the move required new engineering, new customers, and new manufacturing methods. Goto understood that the repair shop had been training. Makita's engineers knew electric motors better than almost anyone in Japan because they had taken apart and rebuilt thousands of them. By November 1959, Makita had fully transitioned into manufacturing electric power tools and began exporting immediately, starting with Australia. Drills, grinders, circular saws, and sanders followed. The company had found its future. In March 1963, only 4 years after entering the power tool business, Makita became completely debt-free. Growth was funded from profits, not borrowing. That discipline became one of the company's defining traits. While many competitors expanded through debt and acquisitions, Makita grew carefully, paying for every factory, subsidiary, and product line from money it had already earned. Makita went public in 1962 on the Nagoya Stock Exchange, then on the Tokyo and Osaka exchanges in 1968, and by 1970 it had reached the first section of all three. The company was becoming one of Japan's largest and most stable industrial firms. In April 1969, Makita introduced the 650D, its first battery-powered drill. Black & Decker had already released the first cordless drill, but Makita was signaling that it intended to compete at the frontier. In December 1978, it launched the 6010D, the world's first power tool to use a nickel-cadmium battery. Makita was not trying to win headlines. It was waiting until a technology was ready for professional use, then building the durable version. The 1970s and 1980s were years of global expansion. In 1970, Makita established Makita USA in New York, its first overseas subsidiary. France, the United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, and more markets followed. The expansion was funded from retained earnings with no debt and no outside investors demanding short-term results. Makita opened its first overseas manufacturing plant in Canada in 1980, followed by Brazil in 1981. In 1985, it began manufacturing power tools in the United States, partly in response to trade tensions and anti-dumping pressure. At the end of the 1980s, Makita hired Giorgetto Giugiaro to design three tools: a circular saw, a grinder, and a drill. The tools were shown at the 1989 World Design Exposition in Nagoya. Makita saw power tools as engineered objects, not disposable commodities. In 1991, Makita made its most important acquisition, Dolmar GmbH, the German chainsaw maker founded by the inventor of the first gasoline-powered chainsaw. The Hamburg factory kept running, the German engineers stayed in place, and production continued under the same standards. That same year, Makita changed its corporate name from Makita Electric Works to Makita Corporation. The old name reflected the repair shop it had once been. The new one reflected the company it had become. In February 2005, Makita introduced the TD130D, the first professional use power tool powered by a lithium-ion battery. Lithium-ion batteries were lighter, held more charge, and avoided the memory effect that plagued nickel-cadmium cells. For professionals, that changed everything. The LXT platform that followed became Makita's most important cordless system, an 18-volt lithium-ion slide battery that powers drills, drivers, saws, grinders, sanders, vacuums, lights, and many more tools. Makita added star protection computer controls, which let the battery and tool exchange data in real time. Temperature, current draw, voltage, and charge state were monitored, so the tool could protect itself from overload and overheating. By 2026, LXT powers more than 300 tools and remains the largest single battery cordless system in the world. For users who needed more power, Makita created XGT, a 40-volt platform that can double to 80 volts. It was not meant to replace LXT, but to sit beside it. Makita chose not to strand existing users, just to chase a higher voltage number. That commitment to compatibility is central to the brand. It values the professional who already invested in the ecosystem. Today, Makita Corporation is headquartered in Anzhou, Aichi Prefecture. It operates manufacturing plants in multiple countries. Annual revenue exceeds $5 billion, and the workforce is more than 17,000. Makita sells in more than 50 countries through subsidiaries and distributors. The company is publicly listed on the Tokyo Stock Exchange, but it has never been acquired, merged, or broken apart. Makita remains the last major independent power tool manufacturer with real global scale. It builds its own motors, designs its own batteries, manufactures in its own factories, and keeps parts available long after products leave the line. Makita does not chase consumer hype, flashy campaigns, or aggressive branding. It builds tools and has done so since 1915, or built the motors that power them. While other brands were sold, stripped down, or folded into conglomerates, Makita remained Makita. Same identity, same engineering culture, same practical commitment to reliability. Mosaburo Makita founded the company. Jujiro Goto transformed it. The real reputation was built one tool at a time on job sites around the world by professionals who picked up a teal-colored Makita and found that it kept working. That is the legacy of an electric motor repair shop that never forgot what happens when a tool fails in the middle of a job.